Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butts, get big or get out.
You know, it's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be. And realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next Farm Bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. HRN is food and beverage radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
This episode is brought to you by Roberta's, home of Heritage Radio Network for 10 years. Learn more about Roberta's at robertaspizza.com.
So you don't shun the devil with your rock and roll load. Knows that country music's gonna save your soul. The devil runs his groove in them rhythm and blues that Sam. It's gonna get you some in the end.
Welcome back to The Speakeasy. I'm Damon Boelte.
I'm Sother Teague.
And I'm Greg Benson. Sother.
Back, wow. Man. Yeah. What is this?
Sorry for my absenteeism. Things came up. I can't even remember why I missed 3 weeks ago, but the past 2 weeks I've been in LA doing the Amori Margot residency at Death & Co. there in LA, which was, man, a blast. But we decided that 2 weeks is too long. We did two-week residencies, one at Death & Co. Denver and one at Death & Co. LA. And I think we'd have more excitement and more buzz if we did a shorter term, like generate some sense of urgency. But really great to experiment and try and figure it out, We took over, listen, there's a couple of Easter eggs that I don't think people know. Maury Margot turned 12 this past month, March 21st, 2011.
Nice. Happy birthday.
They opened. Thank you. And we've been next door to Death & Co.'s original location in the East Village for all that time. So we've been neighbors for 12 years. And there's been certainly kind of a barmance going on between us. We have like kind of a symbiotic relationship. We feed each other guests, and we're my partner Ravi is partners at Gin and Luck, which is owns Death & Company. So there's lots of connections there. When they opened Death & Co. Denver, they have a little sidebar inside Death & Co. That they actually call 6A. And that's like a little wave to me down at the corner of 6th and A. And then when they opened Death & Co. LA, where we just were, they have a little sidebar as well. And it's called Standing Room. And that's because, of course, Maury Margot doesn't have any stools, right? So we've had this relationship going on all this time. So it was great to finally like go and visit their shops, get inside of their houses and do our thing for a new audience. Really fun to take all stirred, no juice, nothing shaken program to LA for sure. Really caught people off guard. I'm exhausted from it.
2 weeks in LA. I mean, looks like you got a tan.
Yeah.
Did I? I don't think so. We were inside and underground the whole time.
You guys can't see this, but he's wearing like a big hipster scarf right now. He's got like a really aggressive fade going on with his hair. It's just we've lost him. He's a West Coaster these days.
He's carrying around his screenplay and trying to pitch it. No, but no, you were in a bar the whole time. But it's funny when you say 2 weeks is too long, because it's kind of like whenever you're in a band, and pop-ups are basically like playing like a rock and roll show a lot of times. But when you're in a band, you don't want to play too frequently, because the more frequently you play, the less people come out to your shows, because they're like, oh, I'll just see them next week, because they play all the time.
That's kind of what happened at both Denver and LA. Yeah. People were like reaching out to us via, text, DM, et cetera, saying, oh, I'm going to come. And then on the last day they would reach out and say, man, I wish I could have made it. I just, things got in the way. But if we were there for just 4 days, or even, like I think like a pop up is one night. That's just one night show, right? Then there's kind of a takeover. That's 2 or 3 nights, right? And then what we called this was a residency. 2 full weeks. But yeah, we had I definitely had, like I said, a certain contingency of folks who went way out of their way. We had people driving all the way up from San Diego. We had a couple people come down literally from San Francisco to see us. So that was amazing to see that kind of turnout, that kind of like loyalty to the brand and coming to see Amor y Amargo. But I definitely can count at least 5 people that I know who reached out to me and said, I'm coming, and then reached out to say, sorry, I never made it. I think you're right. It's that lack of sense of urgency, not getting people motivated to come down because they don't have enough, because they wouldn't have another chance, But again, we loved it. It was great. And I just think, we learned, and the whole thing, both sessions, Denver and LA, were sponsored by, a bunch of folks, really cool people. Altos Tequila, Jägermeister was one of our marquee sponsors. Lillet, some great bitters brands like the Bitter Queens from Greg Robles, who's been on the show. A lot of people supporting us and making sure that this thing could happen. And we're definitely going to do more of them. Amor y Amargo is an easy bar to travel around, but we're going to make them shorter, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then the reason I wasn't on the show, I know Damon, you're out there in California, and you get up early in the morning to be on the show, but we weren't getting home till 3 a.m.
Sure.
And getting up to do the show at 9 was I couldn't do it, man. I tried the first week. I set my alarm and I was like, there's just not a chance.
Yeah, it's an aggressive timeline for people in our line of work. I think that you don't.
What a drag it is getting old.
What a drag it is just generally, I think, being a night owl and having to occasionally do things that happen during 9 to 5 or like day walker hours. Like even to this day, I haven't pulled a regular bar shift since the before times. But even today, when people are like, hey, how do you feel about doing a meeting at 8:30 in the morning? I'm like, ooh, how about a soft noon? How about we agree on a soft 12 p.m. with the potential to push it to 1 if I'm having a slow morning. That's more kind of my timeline these days. So Damon, our cowboy hats are off to you for doing this every week. Man.
Yeah,
it's a thing, but I'm not behind the bar these days. So I don't have those late nights. Well, I still sometimes have late nights, but not working. I'm a 9 to 5er these days, but still in the biz, still, have Grand Army and all that stuff, but it's kind of more on the education side and, just doing, like we've said on the show a lot lately, there's a billion ways to be in the industry without being behind the bar. And
absolutely,
definitely kind of in that phase of my life. I'll get back behind the bar at some point, but right now it's I'm doing this and all the other stuff. So it's it's fun in a different way.
Yeah, it's kind of
but waking up early still sucks.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me of I know he's persona non grata right now, but there is a good Louis C.K. bit where he talks about how being divorced made him a much better dad. He's like, because I get to do something that a lot of dads don't get to do, which is say goodbye to my kids for a week at a time. I kind of feel like it's like that a little bit, I think all of us I almost enjoy the times I get to be behind the bar more because it's a special treat for me now. It's oh, hey, I get to jump back up on the stage. It's I get to pull in it's like being in the audience at a jazz show and having, I don't have a musical bone in my body, but I've seen this happen to friends of mine who are musicians where they'll they'll be recognized by someone who's playing and come on up here for a set. And it's super cool and they have a lot of fun and they get to show off and then you get to go home and it's very, very nice. But yeah, like you said, there's a billion different ways to be in the industry. And speaking of which, and speaking of time zones, we have someone we made it very, very easy for to be in the show today. They could have slept until 4 p.m. and still made it all the way from London. But they're also a 9 to 5er working hard, finding inventive ways to be in the industry. We have Don Davies from the Whiskey Exchange. Don, thank you so much for coming to us all the way from jolly old England.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here and looking forward to it.
we're looking forward to it too. And I was reading some of the stuff that you and you're another friend of the show, Shocky Tom, introduced us, because she's wonderful. And
love that girl.
Yeah, and we were oh, so do we. But we were talking a little bit about you and your passions, and as much as you work for the Whiskey Exchange, you've been really into rum lately. And I'm kind of very, it seems like something that I was excited to talk about. You're clearly excited to talk about it. So what has that been like for you these days?
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely have. I mean, I love all booze. I call myself a booze bitch or wine wench or whatever. But rum for some reason just captured my heart in a big way. And as you say, I love whiskey. I work for probably one of the biggest whiskey buyers in the world. But there was just something. I think a friend of mine always says, if you're drinking rum and you're not smiling, you're drinking the wrong rum. And for me, that just probably sums it up. I love the variety. I love the fact that I think I can't make cocktails to save my life. This is why I drink in bars all the time. So when you say I work 9 to 5, it's more like 9 till 2 in the morning, but half of that's true.
Yeah. It's a hard job, but someone's got to do it.
Right.
I'm probably working your hours, but just differently, more entertainingly, and less drama in the evenings, I guess. But, I think the thing I love about rum is you can go from, it's probably the only spirit in the world that really you can go from an unaged product all the way to a beautifully aged product. You could say tequila and certain, maybe moonshines and things, but actually really rum does it so much better, I think. So yeah, I think that's why. And there's so many places now around the world that are doing it. It's just an awesome product.
Yeah, I've always thought that about rum. It's that it's the most outlaw spirit also, because it can be made like really anywhere in the world, whereas other spirits have certain appellations and regional control, but rum can be made, and that's what's also fascinating about it. It coming from a billion different terroirs, there's a really wide spectrum of rum. So I totally agree with you.
100%. And I think actually the one thing people have a real misconception with rum is that there are no that it is quite rogue, but actually there are regions of the world that do have a lot of structure to them. Like there is AOC when it comes to, Appellation Controle, when it comes to, say, Martinique, for example. It's one of the strictest booze islands in the world, all the way to kind of Barbados, which is fighting for its GI right now, Jamaica that has its GI, even places like Venezuela, which you think, that doesn't have any laws and regulations around rum, does. I think that's what I love about it. It's still quite an undiscovered drink in many respects. I think a lot of people still see it as a big brand drink, but there's so much awesome liquid out there. And it's a really exciting time to be in the category.
I'm so happy you brought up Martinique too, because that is currently occupying the top spot on my travel bucket list. I want to go there so bad, and not just because because I look awesome in a bathing suit. I also want to go there because I love rum agricole. It's one of my absolute favorite spirits out there, and it's one of, if you wanted to, because we bantered a little bit about is terroir a valid term when you're talking about spirits before the show. And I think that if you're gonna take the yes side of that debate, you really don't have a better argument in your arsenal than rum agricole. It just so very much tastes of that place specifically.
100%. And I think, I come from the background when you talk about terroir, I'm a master of wine. I started off as a somm. So for me, terroir is literally, you should be able to pick up that glass, taste where it's from, down to the frickin' vineyard. And I think spirits don't have that to that degree in most instances. I would say in 95% of the instances. But when you're coming to looking at, say, sugarcane juice-based rums, 100% like a rum agricole from Martinique, or let's say a mezcal, you're starting to really understand where that is coming from. And Jesse Estes gave me a couple of samples that they're trying out in Ocho not long ago, where they're looking at different vineyards, agave fields. I was like, vineyards.
Force of habit.
And it was super interesting. And I was like, do you have the next vintage? And he's like, don't, it's 8 years plus till I can get the next. I was like, no, but I'm excited. So I think spirits, I always talk about, and I'm going to use the words of the great man Dave Brum here, that spirits have a sense of place. Because I think for me, spirits is much more than just the land. It's about, I'm not saying that wine is just about the land, but I think spirits is so much more about the history, the culture, the physical production side of it. The aging is so important, and especially in rum. I could go on for the next 200 hours about aging in rum and aging full stop, or wood or yeast, whatever. But
well, I think
it is really.
I think you're
exciting.
onto something there too, because to me, I was lucky enough to go on a trip to Guadeloupe and Martinique. So I got to go to the Damoiseau distillery, which just looks like a big rusty series of pipes. You would never think it was like, we're used to like romanticizing, like giant copper pot stills at Scotch distilleries and, like beautiful tasting rooms. And you go there and you're like, wait, where the hell am I? But because the air is super thick with the humidity, and it's super grassy and funky. And it's like, oh my God, this is what the liquid tastes like in the bottle. But now I'm here, and it is really a sense of place.
If I can encourage you to one distillery in your lifetime in the world, get your asses to Hamden, because I tell you now, I had tears. Like, poor Pepe, who was taking us around the distillery, thought I was absolute nutter. I was just like, this is the dirtiest distillery I've ever seen in my life, but my God, it's awesome. And I do think there is something, they are working with natural yeast, which I do think has a massive part of terroir. But I mean, like, you just walked into it. It was like Willy Wonka. I was going into the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I was like just the most excited person in the entire universe. And I know we're off camera at the moment, but right now my hands are moving at like 100 miles per hour. And off. That's how excited I am.
Yeah, there are some efforts going on out there to like codify rums these days, right? I seem to recall when we had Bailey Pryor on the show from Real McCoy, he was talking about the guardians of rum trying to sort of not to impose rules on the different regions of rum making, but to codify them in such similar to what happened with Scotch, about 40 years ago. Like, we have the Scotch regions, but like to sort of set up the rules and regulations so that we could identify them. Have you heard any forward movement on that sort of thing going on?
Yeah, I mean, like 100%. Like, there are people working very hard within each island, in each country, to try and really build on the credentials within those countries. And I think it is hugely important, because for me, the reason wine has done as well as it has, and Scotch has done as well as it has, is customers know that they're going to, when they drink, say, a Scotch whiskey, let's just throw that out, that it's a minimum of 3 years. Even if it doesn't give you an age, it's a minimum of 3 years. It has minimum criteria that it has to abide by. Cognac, like, when you drink a VSOP, it's 4 years old minimum. And I think those rules are not only there to protect the industry and protect other people from using the name that's there. I mean, Champagne is an amazing example of how it's fought to protect its own name, so its own sense of place. It took on Chanel. When Chanel brought out a champagne perfume, they took it down. They were like, no, you can't do this. And I think there's that side of it, where you're really, really protecting the heritage and the culture and the product, but you're also protecting the consumer from people playing around. I mean, not going to slag America off here, but
it's okay. You can do it.
Yeah,
we do it all the time.
And I lived there for a long time, so I feel like I'm justified in doing this. But there's a lot of misuse of words in the American marketplace. There used to be, but those AOC laws have protected that. And then, so someone, if they're buying champagne, wherever in the world they're buying it, if it's protected by that appellation and the laws of those countries combined, it makes that product so much stronger within itself. So I genuinely think that's a very long way of answering the question. Yes, there are people doing a lot.
No, and I think that's good. I think it's good that there is, because I mean, obviously champagne is delicious, cognac is delicious, Armagnac is delicious, but I think there's a cachet that comes from having those brands so vigorously protected that creates a sense of elevation in the customer's mind,
100%.
and
100%.
With rum, I feel like there's still a lot of the spring breakification of rum is can be a tough thing to undo in people's minds sometimes. And I think by having, tighter controls around like what you're allowed to call a certain style will definitely, I would hope, elevate that in the mind of the consumer.
Yeah, 100%. I think the more credence you can give to a product, then the more the customer views it as something that's special and different. I think, and also it's about us going out and educating. So when a customer walks into a bar and asks for a white rum or talks to a retail person about golden rum or dark rum, we should be turning around and going, "Oh, are you looking for an aged rum? Are you looking for?" We should be trying to slightly change the language ourselves so that the consumer realizes this is not just a product that you whack with a can of Coke. Fine, if you want to do that, do it, go for it. But also, it makes some of the most amazing cocktails, super versatile, and yet you can still drink it. And I think we have to start changing the dialogue as well. I think that's super important.
I agree.
Yeah,
and
that's
also,
always been our position. That's always been our position, right? We're the front lines. We're the ones who face the consumers the most. We're the ones who have to, deliver that education to them. And I think that the eventual codification of the category at large will make people more interested in it. I think that rum is, from the average consumer's point of view, I think that rum is a little bit of a scary category because it is so broad and there's so many varieties and so many places that it comes from that it's a little bit overwhelming.
Oh, you're 100% right. And, we tried to break that down by doing flavor camps of rum. So we have 6 different flavor camps. We've done it for whiskey. We've done it for agave recently, just to allow customers to shop by flavor, because that's how people shop. They shop because they love a brand or they feel engaged by something, but they also have flavor profiles that they like. So I think it's making that a lot easier to understand. And, I think the problem with rum is classification is still an issue. How do you classify rum and how do you talk about it? I think Luca Gargano and Richard Seal did a great job with how they've classified, but they've classified from a very geeky perspective. We took that classification, tried to simplify it a bit, but it's still quite geeky because we're talking a lot about production methods. But I think at the end of the day, the more we can kind of just go out there and talk about the different styles and the different types and flavor profiles and distilleries that, if I think about countries, if I talk about Barbados, I always talk about this beautiful fruit and this lovely spice. If I think about Jamaica, whether they use Muckandunda or not, you always have this sort of ripe banana running through it. And, that's got to have to do for me partly to do with cane vinegar and stuff like that. And their processes they do in the terroir that they have. We talked about Martinique earlier, that lovely linseed oil kind of flavors that come through. I think Claran, I could talk about Claran until I was dead. Leave me there. That beautiful, fresh, grassy kind of funk. Yeah, I think there's just, and now we're looking at things like Scotland producing some incredible rums. Taiwan Renaissance is one of my favorite distillers out there at the moment. I think they're just banging it out there in an amazing way. So, it's just, you're right. There's so much out there in terms of flavor profile. So it's almost like wine in that way. I think people are worried about wine because they're like, unless I know it's a Chianti and I know what Chianti tastes like, actually, what does Sangiovese from Australia taste like? Well, depends. It's a fruitier Sangiovese from Tuscany. So I think it's definitely about getting people to experiment more. That's why we launched Rum Show last year physically, which was great. It's just getting people to try. I think the more people can taste and try, and the more people get, as you say, we are the guardians, can go out there and really talk to people and get people to understand, then the easier it becomes for the eventual consumer. And we're the gatekeepers. It's as simple as that.
Right. Yeah, and I think that sorry, Greg, I just wanted to jump in there because we keep jumping over each other. We don't have our screens on. I think one of the best ways to get consumers to understand rum in a better way than they have for forever. One of my favorite drinks in the world is a rum old fashioned. Okay. And the great thing about any aged spirit, as a buyer and bar owner, anytime a rep would come in with an unaged spirit, just a clear spirit, I would always do the martini test, right? Because it's the best way to have a classic cocktail and try the spirit, and it's going to be spirit forward, so you can see, you still get like the essence, like the full blown essence of what that spirit is. On the flip side of that, making an old fashioned, you're not putting any ingredients in there that are necessarily going to, the bitters are going to heighten all the other flavors, as will sugar. But I think if more people tried rum old fashions, it would, because a lot of general consumers, like the way that they buy spirits is because they've had it in a cocktail, or they're going to make it make a cocktail when they get home with that bottle. So rum old fashions, people, just saying, make yourself a rum old fashioned, and it's a great cocktail to use split bases. I do like 3 different rums in my rum old fashioned, and it's freaking amazing. Try a rum old fashioned. That's all I'm saying.
I love it. It's funny you say that, because we did at Whiskey Show last year. We did Battle of the Spirits, and we made the guys do, I think it was 3 drinks. I think it was 3 different, I can't remember if it was old fashioned. It was something like an old fashioned, one with whiskey, one with rum, and one with tequila. It was hysterical. The tequila and the rum walked all over the whiskey.
Right.
Wow. Nice. I think that's refreshing to me, to know that people are into tequila and rum old fashions. That's good.
I can't remember if it was old fashioned, but it was something.
Or something, yeah. Something, yeah. Cool.
Well, either way, this conversation is making me thirsty. We need to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors, but we're going to come right back and keep on talking with Dawn Davies from the Whiskey Exchange, but mostly about rum. All right, we'll be right back.
Coming this spring, we're working on something big for opening soon.
Opening a restaurant can sometimes take months or even years.
So I have this one consulting client that's been 3 months away from opening for the past year.
And I had a calendar reminder show up today, and the reminder was that our goal was to open tomorrow.
But this spring, you'll be able to hear it in just a few hours.
On March 30th, he had passed away, and then on March 31st, he had come back to life. And then on April 2nd, he had passed away again. And I was like, okay, my regards to the family. I don't even know how to receive this information.
So tune in as we follow one of Brooklyn's best and brightest young chefs and restaurateurs on their journey from start to open doors.
Alex, you need to put more money in. We're out. We can't pay anybody.
He is the worst. Oh my God, that guy.
It's The Build.
Subscribe to Opening Soon from Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Roberta's, home of Heritage Radio Network for 10 years. Roberta's was founded in Bushwick in 2008 and has become one of the most iconic restaurants in the country. HRN made its home inside of Roberta's in 2009, and together they have become part of the DIY fabric of the neighborhood. Roberta's, the pizza restaurant, is open for lunch and dinner 7 days a week and serves much more than just the famous wood-fired pizzas. Their team dreams up new salads, pastas, and sandwiches on the regular. Roberta's Tiki Bar is alive and well in the back garden, serving up frozen drinks in the summer and hot toddies in the winter. Stop by the bakery and takeout spot next door for fresh breads, sticky buns, and pizzas to go. But Roberta's also extends beyond Bushwick, with multiple locations in New York City and now in Los Angeles. You can also find their frozen pies in grocery stores around the country. The spirit of Roberta's, like Heritage Radio Network, is everywhere. Here's to many more years of pizza-powered radio. Learn more about Roberta's at robertaspizza.com.
And we are back. You were listening to The Speakeasy on Heritage Radio Network, where for the past half hour, we've been jumping over each other like dogs chasing a tennis ball because we had the chance to talk about rum with Dawn Davies of the Whiskey Exchange. And I think that got all of us very, very excited, because that's the one thing that I think we can absolutely get us just extremely pumped up to talk about. We're all big rum fans here, but we got so into that, Dawn, we didn't actually get to what it is that you do exactly. So let's back up slightly and talk about that. You work for the Whiskey Exchange. What is that like, and what is sort of your day job?
I ask that of myself every day.
So do we.
Not 100% sure what I do. My official title, if we want to be official about things, is buying director. I really believe I'm General Dog's Body because I also manage the shop teams. I also manage the event teams, and and do all the buying with my assistant, my head buyer for the Whiskey Exchange, which is over 10,000 products, anything from vodka all the way through to champagne and wine and everything else in between, and of course whiskey. So yeah, we have 4 different shows we run each year: whiskey show, cognac show, champagne show, and cognac show. Did I say cognac show?
Yes.
I'm sure I've missed something there. Rum show,
yes.
how did I say that? So yeah, it's quite a busy job, I guess, but I'm super lucky. I love it. It's an incredible, the UK is super lucky. I think in America you're slightly hampered by the 3-tier system, which we are so lucky in the UK not to have to deal with.
It's
It's
a podcast, so you can't see all of us rolling our eyes right now.
But in the UK, I can buy what I want, where I want, from who I want. I buy from all the world over, and it's really, really exciting. The UK has probably one of best access to spirits in the world, and wine in the world. So it's an awesome job. And I've been in the business, I keep saying for like 20 years, but now it looks more like 25, which is slightly terrifying. Started off, as I said, as a som, and worked for some of the best restaurants in the UK, and then joined Selfridges, which is kind of like a very posh store thing. Don't know what the equivalent would be in America. I was like, it's better than like Neiman Marcus.
It's like the number one department store, right, in the world.
Yeah. So owned by actually a Canadian family. But yeah, and then joined Whiskey Exchange 8 years ago. So been here a wee while, which is slightly terrifying. So that's my job in a very small nutshell.
Sounds awesome. Chalky said that you had a funny story about Selfridges and champagne. I think she said something to ask you about a story about
Selfridges and champagne. Oh my God, what could that be? I have many funny stories about Selfridges, including one with a dildo.
There we go.
It definitely wasn't that one.
We got a show.
I don't remember the champagne one. I got to message her and ask her what that one was, because there were so many crazy things that happened there. I loved Selfridges. Selfridges was an incredible time. We sort of really built the department and made it sort of world-beating, world-class. But yeah, it was. Oh, was it the Ace of Spades one? No, it can't be that. Oh my God, there's so many. Now we're all rolling back. About it. I'll have to message her after this thing. What was the champagne story? I don't remember it.
All good. Well, that must have been an interesting, because here in the States, like the department stores, like they are just now starting to get into, at least like wine, but not really like spirits or anything. But you're starting to see people bring in bitters and different things for like cocktail tools, and so I think it's probably going to happen. It'll turn into they'll probably follow that model, and like
I hope so,
cool.
Because I think the great thing about having food and drink experiences in any retail space is that it brings the theater to life, and I think the experiential is so important right now in our day to day, because over COVID we were stuck on these damn screens, and I think we forgot that connection is so, so important. We tried to bring it to life. We did a virtual whiskey show. I practically killed Dave Brum and Billy doing 7 days of whiskey show talk. They almost killed me. Actually, it was 14. Whoops. I almost killed myself. But, I think there's nothing more important. And that's why I literally live in bars half the time, because I think for me, like that food and drink element teaches you so much. One, about flavor. 2, about the products, and you learn new things, and you talk to new people, and the connections. I always say it's not what you know, it's who you know a lot of the time, and that connection point is so, so vital in what we do.
That's why we do it. It's really we were all we were all sitting at a bar stool or at a restaurant one day, and then we decided, hey, I want to do this too.
Right.
Yeah, and we all loved it. I think there was nothing better in my life than working front of house. I loved it, except for the chef shouting at me many, many times. But
Right. There's always that.
So what the hell?
I mean, even that had its certain level of excitement, you know. You mentioned off air that you've never been. I can't believe this, given the length and breadth of your career, that you've never been to Tales of the Cocktail, kind of arguably one of the most visible cocktail conferences that happens every year down in New Orleans. But you are going this year, and you're going to be giving a talk, a seminar. What's the topic of the seminar, and how excited are you? Have you been in New Orleans at all?
I have. I lived in the States for 15 years, and we went everywhere, but we never went to New Orleans. Wow. I don't know why. So I'm very excited to go to New Orleans, just because I hear it's such an incredible city. Also, my best friend lives in Houston, so I'm making an excuse to go see her as well. But I think for me, like, I'm so excited because it's just. It sounds like it's an incredible space for learning and understanding, and also too just to have fun and really engage with people and meet people. And we're doing myself and Hannah Lamphere are doing a panel about the perception of flavor and taste, and that I think is going to be pretty interesting. We're both really excited to do it. So yeah, come on down and say hey. It'd be great to see y'all.
Absolutely, you gotta. You'll be in good hands. It doesn't matter. It's one of the best. Well, it's the best industry in the world. But Tales of the Cocktail is really great because you'll just walk around, and every block you're going to see at least 5 people and then they're going to be like, "Hey, let's go get a frozen Irish coffee at Aaron Rose," or let's go get lunch. Get some oysters or whatever it might be. But I noticed on one article that you were in on barcheck.com. It says they ask you what your fail-safe cocktail is, and you said it's the Negroni. And then they also ask you what is your hangover cure. I think you're going to need both of these for Tales of the Cocktail. And you said Baraka and plenty of sparkling water seem to sort me out. Now, that's great, but I'll tell you my fail-safe hangover cure is a Negroni. So it totally works every time. When we go camping, I always I pre-batch them, and that's what I'm on breakfast duty with bottled Negronis. So I'm gonna say
I love it. I also highly recommend miso soup. I didn't say that to Barcheck about miso soup, but miso soup is a lifesaver.
Yeah,
for me, it's kale and buffalo sauce. I don't understand. Also, with every birthday I have, I feel like my hangover cure ritual gains one more step, and I think in the next couple of years it's going to take me until 6 p.m. at which point you can just start drinking again, so it's fine. I wanted to ask you about something that you brought up. You used a term that I hadn't heard before, and I'm very curious about what it means. You talked about the Parkerization of spirits. So talk to us a little bit about what that is and what your feelings are.
Yeah, no problem. So Parker, Robert Parker was a very, very famous wine critic back in the 80s. Still to this day is very famous, but it was sort of the 80s, 90s. He really kind of made his mark. American guy, started reviewing, and he used to give what we call 100 pointers. And these wines, in my view, were big, beastie wines that you have one glass of and you're exhausted. You don't want to drink them anymore.
Drinking it is like exercise.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they were just like, but they got 100 points and then they sold for thousands of pounds. So everyone's like, yeah, big is better. And it was, it was the time when like these big American Oaky Chardonnays were all the rage. Like the big full body Cabernets and Shirazes were like winning all these big Parker points. And I feel that's slightly happening in spirits at the moment. I think the geeks of the world are like, if it has more esters, we want it. If it's a DOK from Hampton, bring it on. I mean, this is used in perfume by the milligram, guys. Let's look at this from a serious perspective. Yeah. Peat levels, if it's not like the highest ppm, well, we can't possibly drink it. And actually, I think things with big flavor can be balanced 100%, I think, but there is something to be said for something that's super subtle and beautiful and like it doesn't have to overpower and overwhelm your senses, because actually sometimes you just want to sit and drink something and you may want to finish the bottle and maybe go for a second. So
Yeah.
I think there's this movement in spirits. And I love it. I'm going to throw the question back to you guys now that you understand my term parkerization. Do you feel that there's this sort of heading in the spirits world and in the drinks world as well, maybe cocktails, for this kind of big, powerful flavor as opposed
Yeah,
to
I can go first on that because I have some opinions. Especially since I'm getting married in 2 weekends and I'm picking out all the wine and everything. Thank you. But for me, it's like I'm gonna have like I will have an oaky Chardonnay there for like all the family members from other places. But I picked out a Vermentino. I love Vermentino because it's light, crisp, easy drinking, and you can just crush it. And it works well with a lot of different foods. But as far as the spirit side goes, and with cocktails too, I will just say, because we talked about it a little bit before, but mezcal, in really that sense of place, to me, it's like when Sother, you weren't on the show last week, but Sother and I went down to Oaxaca right before the pandemic started. It was like I think it was already moving, but it was right before everything closed down. Anyway,
yeah,
there's a lot of really beautiful, light, delicate mezcals that are more on the grassy side or the fruity side. They're not all smoke bombs, and I won't like list off any brands, but it's those are cool for cocktails and like smaller amounts, I would say. But do yourself a favor, and for our listeners out there, just go to your local bar that specializes in agave spirits and just talk with the bartender and talk about flavor profile, and try some, because it's a really beautiful spirit. On the cocktail side, I think that the low ABV thing has been partially helping with the flavor bomb kind of cocktails. I love martinis, and 50-50 martinis to me they're sessionable. I'm still drinking a martini. I'm still getting the botanicals with the juniper. But then also there's so many great vermouths out there these days and that have popped up over the last decade. And it's like, it helps. It's a 50-50 showcase, not just a 50-50 cocktail. So it's not, they're like sharing the same bill, at a show. They're not, there's not an opener and a supporting act. They're doing it together. So it's a really nice way to drink something, a cocktail that's on the lighter side. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, plus then I love a 50-50 martini. And one of my favorite things about it is that when you're done with it, you can have another and another, and then maybe even another. Yeah. And I definitely, I don't know. I came from the beer world before I was into spirits, and I don't want to turn this into a pissing contest about who has the worst fans. However, bad beer fans are in a category unto themselves. Like, take the most obnoxious person who's ever come into your bar and like try to chat you up and play stump the bartender with whiskey, and multiply it by about 10 when you're talking about just dumb beer fans who are experience chasers. It's like they are after, it's the same thing. It's like, I want like the hoppy, it was the hoppiest thing for a while, and then it was like, no, I want like the sourest thing you have, which to me, first of all, gross. Like, I love a Berliner Weiss in small doses. I don't want to drink something that's basically just lactic acid in a glass. No, thank you. But also, that's such a betrayal of what the style is supposed to be. Like, if you get like an authentically German made Gose or Berliner Weiss, or like a really, there are some Belgian sours that'll blow your hair back with how tart they are, but they're also like very complex and interesting, and there's stuff in there that you can really just dig into beyond the pH balance. I do think that there is a little bit of a sort of conservative counter movement to that, a little bit of a sort of a like libertine movement of making things that aren't super intense. There's a brewery I love here in Brooklyn that I recommend all the time called Wild East, because they have just the monstrous stones required to brew a 3.2% dark mild and put it on the menu, and it's delicious. I think that there is and maybe this is also the fact that, the movement is maturing a little bit. The people who were, when I was 21, drinking really super like triple IPAs that were 14% ABV, that I like to think I've matured a little bit as I've aged, and I've discovered that like there's better stuff out there. There's more complexity to it. And I think maybe the people who were first introduced to this world, 15, 20 years ago, and were those experience chasers, are getting a little bit, mellower. And I like to think that there is definitely an appreciation for, like we were talking about across the board in beer and wine and spirits, in things that aren't gonna just blow your hair back with how peaty or how hoppy or how sour they are. And you can actually kind of get into the complexities of them. And then once you're done, you can have another one.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, my experience, of course, is in the Amari and bitter world. And yeah, that experience chaser is always always looking for the most bitter thing on the bar. What can you do with the Elisera Novasalis? And I'm like, not a lot, to be honest. It overtakes everything in the glass, even in small doses, But I think that's typical, American behavior. We just want the extreme, bring everything on, right? But I'm glad to see that people are turning the tide a little bit and going back to looking for nuance, and as Greg said a couple of times, they're looking to have a second, right? Let's not blast our palates out so we can have another.
I think you're right there about like that sort of, there is a counter movement for sure. And I think it's like anything, wine went through that Parkerization period and is now really pulling back and everything. So, it's going through that. I think spirits is just a little bit, for once, behind wine in that kind of journey. And you're right, there's some amazing mezcals that are just fresh and bright. And, there's some oh my God, like talking about vermouths and amaras and things, I had to do 60 vermouths of De Torino tasting in Italy the other day, and literally by the end of it I was like, no, please, if someone gives me any more sugar.
Yeah.
But the ones, I judge a lot of spirit competitions, and I always say to the people that I judge with, I'm always like, you may be judging this incorrectly because your palate's tired and you're just picking the big bullshit kind of styles and maybe missing the subtlety. And I think like that's also something I always kind of have in my head, is that sometimes you have to go back to it. I always say, if you want to drink something amazing and you want to understand what quality is, if that glass asks you questions and you keep going back to it from a smell perspective or a taste perspective, that's an amazing spirit. It should ask you more questions. It should reveal something all the time. And I think we don't let spirits breathe enough in the glass and take time. I mean, I think that's also something that we should get better at.
Absolutely. Well, I think it also is just about, I don't know, and this is a very, wow, we're really ripping on the United States today. But you know what? Sometimes we deserve it, so it's fine. But I think that is a very American thing to like feel bad about feeling good, Like, I think that I hate the term guilty pleasure. It's like, don't ever feel guilty about something that makes you happy. Like, don't beat yourself up because there's a thing that you enjoy. It doesn't matter if it's like not cool or whatever. And I think that we have that about, feeling good in all sorts of different ways, with the media that we consume, with the experiences that we have, certainly with sex, but that's another podcast. But I also...
Are we back to the dildo again?
I really just want to circle. I want to know the dildo story, Dawn. You can't tease us with something like that and then not tell it. But I also think that really applies to food and drink. I think that we are shamed into thinking of the things that we put into our mouths as like fuel and nothing else. And I don't think that there really is a culture in the United States, the way that there is in maybe places like France and Italy and other spots that make really, really awesome wines and spirits, of just savoring it and like getting to enjoy and like letting that spirit kind of open up and sort of having the interplay between you and that thing, and really just unashamedly like taking a lot of pleasure in what's in your glass.
100%. I always say in the UK, we're really great at drinking. We're not good at tasting.
We got it from you, Dad. We got it from watching you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd like that. That was a solid thought, Greg.
Thanks, man.
Because, sometimes when it's 9 a.m. here and I'm doing this radio show, I'm like, I do deserve a Fernet Branca right now.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I'm not going to feel guilty about it. There was, I bring this up every once in a while, but Paul Picoult, I think it was Paul Picoult. I should research this article from like 20 years ago, but he was writing an article about a seminar he was teaching, and it was about beer. And he was talking about like a German Hefeweizen, and in the class, or it was like a Saison or a Hefeweizen or something like that. Something light and beautiful. And he was like, yeah, this is just like, and everyone was tasting. He's like, this is just like a great like breakfast beer. And everyone kind of snickered. And he was like, why? He's like, I wasn't making a joke. It's like, this would be a great breakfast beer. And it's just kind of like our culture just doesn't get that. I'm not saying we should all be drinking Fernet at 9 a.m., but, we start at 8 a.m. when you really need it. But it's just, but yeah, but we also like ruined the world with like fast food. And, so like, part of my honeymoon is going to Florence, which is my favorite city in the world. And the culture there is just like, and then we're going to San Sebastian. So it's like, just like pinchos and sherry. And it's like, just living the good life. And it's just normal. It's normalized. It's what you do.
And I think that's super true. Our cultures often dictate how we kind of perceive food and drink and things. And there is, the amazing thing when you go to Italy, you never drink without food.
Right.
Like you just wouldn't. There's this amazing wine show called Vinitaly in funnily enough in Italy. And you go to every stand and like their mama's cooked like some beautiful like bruschetta thing, or like they done the saucisson, or like you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I leave eating more food than I've drunk of wine, which is probably not the plan for the show.
Well, on the flip side of that,
incredible.
I don't have meals without having a drink, and I mean, well, I don't eat breakfast. Sometimes I do, but I guess I don't really.
Drinking is not eating breakfast, just as much.
Yeah. But it's like it feels weird to me, and this is a very like European thing. It's like it's almost sacrilege to like to have this awesome food in front of you, and then not have a pairing with it. It just doesn't make sense to me. And maybe it's because I grew up in the country in Oklahoma in the Bible Belt, where it was extremely shameful to just drink in general. But just to me, I'm like, no, that's the thing I like the most in life is having great food with great friends, and a great glass of wine or cocktail with that. That's just part of it. And it should be.
Oh yeah, I think this is why we do what we do, isn't it? So that we can go out and afford great food and great drink, and it's just
that's us working
kind of life. That's working. I keep saying, and I stagger in at like 3-4 in the morning. I'm like, I was working. And my partner's like, yeah, right.
What a great this is the time of year. This is the time of year where I have to take my credit card statements to my tax guy and be like, no, trust me. This was all for work. I promise. Exactly. It was legitimate research. Don, I know we have to let you go in a second, but you mentioned another word that I want to follow up on. Mitchmas. What? I mean, unless you want to tell the dildo story right now. What is Mitchmas?
So Mitchmas is a chalky creation. So one of our best friends is a guy called Mitch Wilson, and MW. So I'm DD MW because I'm a master of wine, and he's Mitch Wilson DD because we both have to share everything in life. And that's one of the funniest people in the world, and I adore him. He's the brand ambassador for Black Tot, which Impex, I believe, brings in the US. Cool. And he's just hysterical. So Chalky, because he just also gets himself into quite entertaining situations, Chalky's done a calendar at Christmas. So every year she does her amazing drawings. And so watch out for the 12 days of Mitchmas. We might be changing up this year, he tells me. So we'll see. But always quite entertaining. And yeah, I can tell you the dildo story if you really want, but maybe we'll save that for the time.
Bonus episode.
Subscribe to our Patreon. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I guess we'll save the dildo story till next time because we would love to have you back on the show. We could talk to you forever, or listen to you talk forever.
I love you guys already.
But yeah, as far as any kind of, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, you're on social media, correct? At
yeah.
As you just mentioned, at Dawn Davies MW.
I think I'm Dawn Davies MW. Yeah, I was like, what is my Instagram handle? Yeah, please feel free to reach out. I'm always sort of happy to have any questions come my way. Always excited to hear of new brands if anyone's got something exciting on the horizon. So yeah, just feel free to reach out. Or I'm easy to find at the Whiskey Exchange, which is where I live night and day.
Cool. Well, awesome. It's been so great having you on the show today, Dawn, and we'll definitely have to have you back sometime soon. Maybe we can get you and Chucky on the show together, and Mitch.
That would be a disaster. And Mitch, 100%. That would not go well for anyone.
We'll have to do it in person at Tales of the
And we
Cocktail.
definitely need alcohol.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we always have that. All right. Thanks, everyone, again, for listening to the Speakeasy on Heritage Radio Network. Tune in next week where we always have great, interesting friends and just fun industry people on the show. And I want to say thanks to Armin for being there for us. He's producing and engineering the show today, as he always does. And so just want to thank you again for that. Till next week, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
So you don't shun the devil with your
The Speakeasy is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food and drink radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.